She awoke to a chilly sensation streaming down her throat. The gymnasium was empty. The lights flickered and created lengthy shadows across the gymnastics mats. Marnie lay on the floor, her knee aching from hot iron torture. Above her dangled a pyramid. Not the one she'd fallen from. Another one. Human. 10 sets of eyes gazed down. 10 sets of arms were crossed across their chests. They all donned black masks. "You've lost," a voice stated. Then the pyramid started to tumble. Marnie Covington disliked being new. It usually began the same way, an empty school corridor. Hundreds of pairs of frigid eyes glided over her physique, analyzing and deciding her position in the hierarchy. She had visited 5 schools in the previous 3 years. A military parent seldom stayed at one post for long. Wildwood High was no exception, with the same yellow-red leaves outside the windows, the odor of disinfection from the gym, and the delicious perfume of chocolate from the broken machine gun near the stairs. She spent the first 2 days quietly observing. Girls with high ponytails and flawless cosmetics. Boys on the football squad smelled like deodorant and masculinity. Her teachers had already assigned her the character of the quiet, weird new girl. On day 3, Ashley Graves contacted her. Cheerleader captain. School queen. Blonde with frigid blue eyes, like ice crystals in a drink. She paused in front of Marnie, blocking the light from the window, and Marnie took a step back. "You're tall," Ashley commented. "I am not asking." Stating. Marnie was quiet. Flexible. "I did gymnastics," Marnie muttered. Ashley glanced her up and down before smiling. It was not a welcoming grin. It was the smile of a chess player who has seen the ideal move. "You're excellent for the pyramid." The gym smelled like matting and perspiration. The initial pyramid was basic, with 3 tiers. Marnie was positioned at the very top. She could feel the girls' hands under her quivering with anxiety, their sticky fingers pushing into her calves. "Don't hesitate," Ashley said quietly, stepping to the side. Marnie concentrated. She raised her hands. She took a breath. Then she heard laughing. Quiet. Evil. The toes of her right foot instantly opened. The world flipped. Air rushes into her lungs. Something sharp poked her on the side. She slumped on the mat, panting for air. Then she heard a scream. Ashley lay 10 feet away, moaning in anguish and clutching her arm, which was twisted at an unnatural position. "You pushed me," she hissed. Marnie didn't have to glance around to see that everyone had already concluded that was what had occurred. The females on the squad looked at her with hatred. The bus raced to Ashley. Someone murmured from behind, and she did it on purpose. Marnie wished to deny it, to say that she had done nothing. But then she noticed Ashley smiling through her tears of anguish. As if it was only the first move of the game, the gym transformed into a torture dungeon, with every sound echoing in the temples like the sound of a hammer. The balls that boomed out against the walls sounded like gunfire fired by a firing squad. The laughing of the girls on the squad was like sharp shards of glass cutting into the flesh. Marnie trained alone. Her coach assigned her a place adjacent to filthy gym mats that smelled of sweat and sorrow. He gazed at her as if she were contaminated with the disease, disgusted and terrified. Randomness was her regular companion. A glass of water would accidentally drop over into her clothing, causing clear stains that weighted down the fabric. The bathroom door would accidentally latch as she stepped in, and muted laughing could be heard outside. Her footwear accidentally disappeared before practice, leaving her barefoot on the frigid floor. The football players created a new pastime. They lined up like shooters, each holding a bottle in his hand. "I bet you 5 that I'll miss," said the squad captain, his voice filled with phony compassion. The half-liter bottle struck her in the back of the skull with a dull thud. The sweet, sticky liquid poured down her spine, like the touch of some terrible creature's tongue. "Oh, sorry, newbie." He extended his hands in full anguish. "I didn't count." The audience burst out laughing. Marnie did not turn around. She showed no signs of suffering. She calmly knelt down, picked up the bottle, her hands did not shake, which surprised her, and put it into the garbage with dignity. The next morning, her skiff welcomed her in crimson. The paint was viscous, like blood, and had not yet dried. The big letters, "Beater," were meticulously chiseled out. She stood before the decision, gripping her gym bag so tightly that the seams hurt in her palm. The students had already gathered around her. "Wow," someone whistled in the audience, someone got to the army kid. The chemistry instructor passed past with her eyes discreetly down. Her white lab coat fluttered in the air, leaving a trail of formalin and apathy in its wake. Rumors quickly spread. "She's the reason Tyler and Jessica were kicked out. She tipped off the director about drugs at the party. She filmed everything on her phone." The truth is, she mentally chuckled at it. The reality was like her pendant, little, icy, and concealed beneath her t-shirt. Ashley was waiting for her at her skiff. The cast on her arm was snow white, like a bone had broken through the flesh. Dozens of classmates' autographs were vibrant, lively, similar to a cast after a party. "Ashley," Marnie murmured, getting so near she could smell her costly perfume, which had overtones of jasmine and poison. "I didn't push you." Ashley turned gently, as if dancing. Her blue eyes were vacant, as if no one existed behind them. "I understand." 3 words. And the entire universe flipped upside down. "Then why?" "You're new," Ashley said, her lips smiling but her eyes not. "They stayed dead. Rules of the game." She lifted her plastered hand as if to swear, then touched the pendant on her neck. The little pyramid shone like a blade. "Nice to meet you, Covington." She then turned and went away, leaving Marnie alone in the middle of the corridor with thousands of eyes on her. That's how they see the condemned. That's how they view a body. Marnie recognized one thing: the game never ended. She was only getting started. Pulley 217 creaked as if it were alive and groaning in anguish. Marnie froze, the sound eerily similar to the one she had heard in her nightmares the night before. The lock plate, cold and dead, mirrored her terrified visage and transformed it into a caricature. She held out her hand and immediately sensed something was amiss. The bag was active. Its surface pulsed beneath his fingers, warm and sticky, like that of a fevered sufferer. The sticky dampness engulfed his fingertips and clung to his flesh like dried blood. The air around her thickened and filled with a heavy, sweet odor reminiscent of flowers and decaying flesh. Marnie nearly collapsed from sickness due to the strong odor. She tore the lock. Inside there was something that would never fly again. Dove. It had 2 black peas for eyes and they were wide open. They had a fixed face of utter terror. Its beak was slightly ajar, as if the bird intended to shout something at the last minute. But the most horrifying thing was what someone did to his chest. Where there should have been gray feathers, a flawlessly even pyramid gapped. Someone had cut it out expertly and elegantly, as if a surgeon was enjoying the procedure. The wound's edges were even, as if they had been cut with a scalpel rather than a knife. Inside, bones were apparent, white and immaculate, as if clean. Marnie jumped back and smacked her back against the pulley. Her ears rang, black specks hovered before her vision, her heart hammering so hard it seemed like it was about to burst through her chest. "This is a joke," she muttered. But the fragrance of death lingered in the air. She had sticky traces on her fingertips. And in her suitcase was something that would never fly again. Her fingers involuntarily clutched the necklace, a little pyramid that was all that remained of her father. The metal felt especially chilly, as if it was absorbing the entire tragedy of the event. Then she noticed. Another pendant lay on the floor, in a puddle, or was it water? The same one, but with a crack. It glittered as if lighted from within, reflecting the light from the lamps in scarlet bursts. Marnie leaned forwards. The air froze. It felt as if the entire school was holding its breath. Her fingertips contacted the metal, and she nearly shouted. The pendant was hot, like if it had just been removed from a fire. The fissure appeared deeper than before, as if it were severing the pyramid in half, and suddenly there was laughing. Somewhere behind. Ringing. Childish. Marnie turned swiftly. The corridor was vacant. But those shadows. The shadows moved. They reached out from the pulleys like hands attempting to grasp. They crept around the walls like a spider web. They coalesced into a single large black spot, shapeless yet incredibly persistent. She gripped Ashley's pendant so tightly that the rough edge sliced her palm. Blood, warm and alive, oozed between her fingertips. It wasn't a sign. It was a map. A gaming map using live humans as its parts. Where the rules are inscribed in blood. Where victory smells like death. Someone was watching someplace, whether it was the classroom, the stairs, or the lavatory. Waiting. And laughing. Quietly. Angrily. As if they knew exactly how it would all end. As if this were only the beginning. Marnie described the library as smelling like a forgotten world, old volumes that no one had read, wooden shelves creaking beneath the weight of time, and the faint perfume of wax used to clean the floors in the summer. Here, among these shelves locked in forever, she could breathe. The sun's rays filtered through the dusty windows, leaving broad golden stripes on the floor. Marnie was tracing her fingers down the book spines when her nails came into contact with something soft. The diary's leather cover seemed warmer than the other volumes, as if someone had just handled it before burying it. Lisa Mayfield, embossed lettering glistened against the maroon backdrop. The pages opened with a delicate rustling, as if sighing after a long period of imprisonment. The final item was written in shaky handwriting, with letters jumping and banging into one another like scared children. They know. I did not want to murder him. She made me. The pyramid always falls. Marnie turned the page and saw a photograph. 3 teenagers, Lisa with a tight smile, Ashley with a frigid expression on her face, and a lad whose name was written in little black handwriting, Jacob. Last day. The smartphone in her hand seemed unexpectedly weighty. Search for Jacob Wildwood death to you. The first findings were tragedy at Wildwood High, student dies after falling from school roof. Second, the cheerleader died a week after the event. Police are treating this as a suicide. However, the details didn't add up. Marnie discovered a story in the archives of a local newspaper. Lisa was discovered not at home or in a park, but in the school gymnasium. Her body had multiple fractures, as if she had fallen from a considerable height. From the peak of a pyramid. When Marnie turned away from the TV, she saw a pyramid necklace on the table in front of her, its jagged edge pointing at her like a bloody compass needle. Somewhere deep in the classroom, laughing burst out, a harsh, unnatural sound reminiscent of a broken child's toy. Marnie's heart fell. She now understood. Lisa was not leaping. She'd been pushed to fall. They were attempting to compel her to fall right now. The shadows on the library walls appeared unusually lengthy. The air grew dense and difficult to breathe. The chandelier on the table reflected light, creating crimson reflections on the shelves. The pyramid always collapses. And when it does, there is always someone beneath it. The school parking lot in a murky autumn evening seemed like a scene from an unfinished horror film. The wind rustled the yellowed leaves, which rolled under the wheels of the single automobile parked near the gate. A white vehicle, as pristine as its owner, with a gleaming pyramid-shaped necklace in the rearview mirror. Ashley Graves leaned on the hood, her plastered palms seeming white in the faint light like a marble tombstone. She wasn't startled when Marnie emerged from the shadows. "You have read the diary." The voice was as smooth as a razor blade. "This is not a question." A declaration of fact had already become unavoidable. Marnie felt the phone in her pocket suddenly gain the weight of a weapon. She grabbed the case tighter, feeling the cold metal cut into her hand. "What did you do with Lisa?" Ashley grinned. The smile was like a fissure in the ice, thin, treacherous, and concealing an ocean of frigid malice. "We played a game. She lost." Her speech was clear and without hesitancy. It seemed as if she were discussing a trip to the supermarket or schoolwork. "What is the game?" "The Pyramid of Fear." Ashley took a step forward. Her costly perfume, with undertones of jasmine, blended with the honey aroma of her cast. "Each year, we select one. And we see if it will survive." Marnie backed away, feeling the cold metal of the automobile burn her back. "You're crazy," she murmured, her remarks childishly innocent in light of what she had just heard. Ashley got her phone out without hesitation. The screen flashed up in the darkness, casting a soft blue light on her face. She tapped the screen, and the video began playing. Lisa was standing on the edge of the school roof when the video was recorded. The wind tossed her hair, and tears flowed down her cheeks. She screamed, but there was no sound. She instantly reached out and pushed him. "She didn't want to," Ashley said, shutting off the video. "But the pyramid demands sacrifices." Marnie felt terror flow through her body, pure and primordial, like an animal trapped in a trap. "Why me?" Ashley inclined her head, as if looking at a fascinating exhibit in a museum. "Because you are new. Because you are perfect." Her white sneakers crunched softly on the tarmac as she turned and went away. The automobile doors opened and closed with a quiet click. The engine roared. Marnie stood motionless, feeling something icy slither up her spine. She now knew. The game was underway. And the only way to survive was to avoid being the next one to fall. Pain rushed down her neck in a rapid wave, like if someone had inserted a hot needle into her flesh. Marnie blinked, and the world flipped upside down. The gymnasium. But that wasn't the one she knew. The ceiling appeared taller, the space broader, and the air heavier, permeated with the odor of anxiety and perspiration. The lamps glowed softly, creating strange shadows on the walls that moved like living animals. Figures gathered around her. Motionless. Faceless. Each wore a black mask that covered her face and left just small openings for her eyes. They surrounded her in a ring, motionless and still, like stone sentinels guarding an old temple. A step emerged from the hush. Ashley. Her blonde hair slipped from behind her mask like a gold thread through black velvet. She was holding an ancient rope, with frayed threads that resembled the veins of old leather. The rules are straightforward. Ashley's voice sounded weird, like if it came from the air itself, rather than her throat. You're climbing to the summit. She gave an upward nod. Marnie raised her head. A pyramid. 10 levels. 10 levels of human beings remain immobile like dolls, waiting for the last, live portion. To the absolute top. To the pinnacle. If you fall. Ashley stepped to the side, and Marnie noticed what was laying there. Boards. Wide, rough, with gleaming nails protruding like the fangs of a massive beast. You will perish. Marnie felt her heart beat like a crazed bird in a cage. And if you can stand it. Ashley grinned. Her lips, as crimson as fresh blood, twisted into an unsettling grin. You will become one of us. The air in the hall suddenly felt too heavy. Marnie took another look at the pyramid. At those who made it up. At the masks that covered their faces. She understood. It wasn't just a test. This was a ritual. And she was the final component that completed the system. The last stone of the pyramid. She had to pick between becoming a victim or an executioner. Somewhere in the back of the hall, someone laughed, quietly, femininely, like a bell. The game was beginning. The sun shining through the windows of Wildwood High was deceptively calm. It stroked the ancient masonry of the school, as if attempting to erase the memory of that night. But the stones remembered. They remembered the scream that hung in the air. They remembered the whistling of the wind, broken by the falling corpse. Marnie is no longer scared to be touched. She now touches herself, the shoulders of the new ones, and their books, leaving white envelopes with red sealing wax on the pages. Her jewelry, a little pyramid, has gotten colder and heavier. It draws her down, reminding her of the weight of the decisions she made. The gymnasium is locked. But at night, as the moon shines through the large windows, the shadows on the floor make a recognizable shape. 10 levels. 10 levels. The last one is vacant and waiting. Ashley. She was discovered a week later in the woods outside of the city. Officially, there was an accident. Unofficially, there were whispers in the school halls that her body had been fractured in an unusual way. As if someone had meticulously assembled a human jigsaw but had purposefully jumbled up all the pieces. The letters keep arriving. Not only for Marnie now. They emerge in the drawers of those who know too much. White, tidy, with embossed lettering spelling out the word, waiting. Marnie occasionally sees them, the new ones, peering about timidly with familiar pendants in their palms. She grins at them in the same manner Ashley did. Cold. Calculating. Perfect. Because the pyramid will never fall apart. It merely rebuilds. And everyone who believes they are standing on top of it is already falling. They simply haven't recognized it yet. Something murmurs within the gym, where no one dares to venture after dark. Some whisper, "Who's next?" to others who are willing to listen. And if reading these sentences sent shivers down your spine, know this. The game has already started. And you're already playing it. Even if you haven't realized it yet. After all, the pyramid always collapses. And you are the next tier. Now, tell me. Have you truly never been the new kid in school? Never felt as if everyone around you knew something but didn't tell you? Perhaps you've heard something similar. A game. A option. About those who are constantly on top until they collapse. Share your opinions in the comments. Has this ever occurred to you? Perhaps you've heard rumors of a pyramid in your community or school. Tell us. Someone out there could be searching for answers. Just like Marnie. If this tale gave you shivers, please like, subscribe, and click the bell. Because the next story may be about you. Or about someone who has already reached the top of the pyramid. Story 2. What if your town's hero was actually its biggest nightmare? Football was more than simply a pastime in Blackwood, it was a religion. But when the new member joined the team, everything seemed different. He never said where he came from. Never rejoiced with the others. Then, players started disappearing. Whispers spread. Strange symbols emerged on the lockers. At night, something lurked beneath the bleachers, observing. Was this just paranoia? Or had something horrible seized the field? One cheerleader was about to find out. And wished she hadn't. Blackwood, Texas is a place where time stands still at daybreak. It spread among the mesquites and fields, like if torn from an old picture. Highway 36, the town's lone main roadway, ran through it like a vein in an oak leaf. Every home had its own story, the white one with the blue shutters, the McCall family, who had been here since the Great Depression, the shabby bar of Old Jack's, where the beer never ran out, and the library, which had a wobbly sign that had groaned in the wind for 40 years. Here they lived in accordance with the natural cycle. The children were familiar with every route in the county, from the ancient bridge over the river where they fished for crayfish to the abandoned farm on the outskirts where a mystery fire had happened. They rushed through the streets till dark, certain that nothing evil could happen in Blackwood. Sheriff Barnes carried a gun only for law enforcement purposes. The last significant crime occurred before the current mayor was in first grade. But Blackwood's true heart beats in the high school stadium. Every Friday, when the fall sun casts its final rays through the woods, the entire town holds its breath. Farmers shuttered their stores 1 hour early. Mrs. Peterson closed her antique business, despite the fact that she typically stayed until 9 o'clock. Even the city councilmen, who typically spent their evenings in the saloon playing dominoes, raced to their seats in the stands. The stadium was blazing with dazzling lights, like a lighthouse in a sea of Texas night. The Black Wolves did their magic in front of a crowd of 2,000 people. Every touchdown was a celebration, and every defensive tackle was a titanic struggle. In those times, Blackwood became more than simply a dot on the map. He became a legend. There was no place for secrets here. Perhaps they were too well hidden. Under the creaking old stands, in the darkness beneath the stands, where no one looked. In the vacuous eyes of the team's new player who never revealed his origins. In the black SUV with tinted windows, which occasionally arrived near the stadium at night. Blackwood was an ideal town. But ideal communities, as they say, excel at concealing their dark secrets. The Black Wolves added a new player, Jacob Reynolds, at the start of the season. He sprung into the team's customary rhythm like an autumn breeze into the freezing air before the game. Tall and athletic, he glided on the field with the elegance of a Texas coyote crossing the grasslands. Jacob's magnetism was irresistible. When he smiled, the females in the stands were ecstatic, and the lads in his class grimaced, perceiving his innate superiority. In just a few weeks, he rose to prominence on the squad. His touchdowns appeared to read opponents' minds before they knew it. Coach Danvers described him as a natural leader, and local media had already christened him the unsung miracle. But Emily noticed something that others didn't. When everyone was celebrating their successes, she would catch his brief, unsure looks, moving to the side, as if he was always glancing back at someone. Jacob seldom discussed his history. When asked where he came from, he would merely shrug his shoulders or jest, hell, judging by the training. Then there came the day following training. Emily, who had lingered over a forgotten garment, noticed Jacob standing near the parking lot as the sun began to drop. He was speaking with two males she had never seen before. One was towering, with a stone-carved face and black spectacles that caught the final rays of the sunset. The other was stocky, with broad shoulders, and carrying a huge gym bag that appeared excessively hefty for typical equipment. Their talk appeared strained. The man with the glasses muttered something forcefully, and Jacob immediately stooped down as if he had been struck. Emily unintentionally moved a step closer to get a better look, and all three of them immediately froze. A black SUV with tinted windows was parked a few meters away. The strangers hurriedly hopped inside it, and before the doors could close, the car accelerated away, leaving a cloud of dust in its wake. Jacob turned to her, his face pallid, and Emily noticed something in his eyes that she had never seen in this confident young man. "It's just old friends," he mumbled, swallowing hard. "Don't pay any attention." But his voice quivered. And as he raced away, leaving Emily in the center of the desolate parking lot, she realized something was amiss. Not so for him. Not so for these friends. And possibly not in this entire metropolis. A week following Jacob's visit, something happened that rocked Blackwood to its core. Michael Harris, the team captain, is gone. Michael was more than just the Black Wolves commander. He was the team's soul, the one who sparked a fire in every player's eyes before each game. His laughter resonated throughout the locker room, and his confidence on the field was as rock solid as the canyon walls. And now he's gone. Did not attend training. I did not answer any calls. Didn't leave a single message or indication. His bed at his parents' residence remained unchanged since the morning he was last seen. His favorite outfit was still hanging in the locker. Even his retriever, Buddy, was hunkered by the entrance, waiting for his owner to return. The police launched an inquiry, but all roads went nowhere. Maybe he ran away with a girl, some speculated. Didn't he get tired of this town, some muttered. But Emily knew Michael. He would never abandon the squad before a crucial game. He would never abandon Buddy. He never left without saying his goodbyes. There was one more thing upsetting him. Jacob has changed. He'd grown much more reclusive than usual. He frequently left the locker room during training to chat on the phone, and his countenance was always strained following these discussions, with his hands shaking slightly. One day, while gently passing through the rear room near the stairs leading to the emergency exit, she heard his voice. "I don't want to do this anymore." His comments were low but terrifying, as if he were speaking not to himself but to someone invisible on the other end of the wire. "This is getting out of control." Then a long pause. "You do not comprehend." He was not supposed to find out. Emily's heart fell. He. Who is he? Michael? Her suspicions, which had hitherto been hazy and unpleasant, now got shape. What if Jacob did not join the squad by chance? What if his entrance was part of something larger? And, most crucially, what if he knew where Michael was? Emily was unable to sleep that night while lying in bed. She couldn't stop wondering why Jacob was so terrified. Who is he speaking to? And what exactly happened to Michael Harris? Someone was monitoring her house from outside the window, in the dark. And this person also had the answers. During another game, when the stadium was filled with fan cries, Emily unintentionally discovered a secret that would change everything. As she entered the locker room to retrieve her missing lipstick, she realized Jacob's bag had been stolen from beneath the bench. A black notebook's corner poked out. Emily's pulse raced as she grabbed for the treasure despite knowing she shouldn't. The notebook felt unusual to the touch. The leather cover was rough, as if it had been ruined by water, and the edges were torn from being carried around frequently. Emily froze when opening the first page. These were not ordinary notes. The numbers and characters resembled a cipher, scrawled in a tense yet legible handwriting. Some pages were ripped off, while others merely included single sentences like, "I can't take it anymore." "They know." If he said. Emily's fingers involuntarily grasped the notepad. It was evidence. But of what? Without considering the ramifications, she tucked the notepad in her sports jacket. On the walk home, she pondered the worst-case scenarios. Perhaps these were the coordinates of the location where Michael's body was hidden? Or is it the code to something more worse? She spent hours at home, confined in her room, attempting to solve the problem. The internet gave the answer: geographic coordinates. They began a search and pointed to an old abandoned property 15 miles from Blackwood that had been said to be. There was a fire there once. Nobody goes there after dark. They say you can hear voices there. Emily couldn't simply wait. The cops were not discovering anything, and Michael may still be alive. She took a torch, a smartphone, and pepper spray, a 16th birthday gift from her father, and headed out to investigate the truth. Emily visited the farm at night, when even the owls were scared to screech in the deep calm. The road curled like a snake across the frost-covered meadows. The old farmhouse loomed before her, ugly as if it had been carved from a nightmare. The barn stood turned on its side, its smashed windows like empty eye sockets. The wind danced with the creaking gates, producing groan-like sounds. She went cautiously, the crunch of a limb beneath her feet echoing in the dead calm. The flashlight sent a throbbing beam into the darkness, revealing the dust that swirled in the air like ghosts from the past. Then she saw. Michael's belongings sat in the barn's corner, behind a pile of decaying straw. Its form is now dusty and tattered, as if someone attempted to break it apart. Phone's screen is damaged, as if it was hurled against a wall. His favorite bracelet was the same one he wore every day, inscribed with the words, "Never retreat." It was not an escape. This was an abduction. Suddenly, there are footsteps. Solid. Deliberate. Somebody was approaching. Emily dashed behind the boxes, her heart beating so fast that her ears rang. She grabbed the pepper spray in her palm, bracing for the worst. The barn door creaked. Jacob entered. He looked dreadful, with sunken eyes and dirt-covered clothing. He looked about, uneasily, before reaching for Michael's belongings. His hands shook as he gathered them into a bag, as if he were terrified they may explode. "God, what have I done?" he muttered, his voice filled with pain, and Emily's chest clenched. He disappeared as fast as a shadow. But Emily couldn't stop. She followed him, hiding in the long grass, which begged, "Come back." But she didn't listen. Because she realized Jacob was at the core of this nightmare. And if he is still alive, where is Michael? What's worse, who else knew the truth? Darkness covered them both as she followed him to a black SUV parked in the shade of the trees. The game was only beginning. Emily followed Jacob into the night's tight quiet, when the air seemed thick with impending dread. Jacob's black SUV moved slowly through the neighborhood, as if he, too, was attempting to escape attention. She maintained her distance, her hands holding the steering wheel hard and her gaze locked on the red lights on his license plate. Composition. It appeared before her like a ghost from the past, a vast concrete box that had previously served as the heart of the local industry. Now it was only broken windows with dark holes that resembled a monster's eyes. Walls, coated with cruel graffiti stains, bright with the hues of curses and oblivion. The door, suspended on a single loop, groaned in the wind, as if mocking her anxiety. Emily parked 3 streets away, turned off the engine, and remained in darkness. She took out her flashlight and smartphone, just in case. The pepper spray was in her jacket pocket. First steps. Every crunch underfoot was like a deafening gunshot in the eerie calm. It accelerated as Jacob disappeared inside, following him like a shadow. Heart. It pounded like it wanted to rip her chest apart. But she kept going. If not her, then who? Michael may be someplace in that black abyss. The truth was more essential than fear. She approached the door and glanced inside. Inside the warehouse, the air was dense with the scent of ancient wood, rust, and something else, something pleasantly foul that made the stomach tighten. The feeble light of the street lamp, which filtered through the cobwebbed windows, cut through the darkness in wobbly, weak beams. It lit the dust, which swirled lazily in the air like ghosts from the past. Emily leaned herself against the wall, feeling the hard concrete scratch her back. She proceeded gently, step by step, listening for every rustling and groan in the ancient wood beneath her boots. Voices. They resonated from the depths of the warehouse, muted yet deafening. "Are you sure no one was following you?" A low voice bellowed. "No one," Jacob said, but there was an untruth in his tone. Emily got closer, hiding between old wooden boxes that smelled like damp pulp. She looked into the gap between the pallets, and froze. 3 persons stood there, surrounded by weak lights. Jacob seemed strained, with heavy bags under his eyes, as if he hadn't slept in days. The first man was tall, with close-cropped hair that shone in the light and a severe scar on his cheek that appeared to be an attempt to gouge out his eye. Second, short but broad-shouldered, with arms like oak branches. His eyes were cold and vacant, as if he was looking through them rather than at them. "The deal is simple," the tall guy said, stroking the scar as if it were a ceremony. "You continue to perform your role, and we promise that everything will happen as planned. The money will be yours. But if someone asks too many questions..." He did not continue, but his tone conveyed a menace. Emily caught her breath and felt a chilly sweat run down her spine. Her heart was racing so rapidly that she feared someone would hear it. She understood everything. Jacob was only a puppet in this nasty game. But what occurred next flipped her life upside down. Another figure emerged from the shadows, stepping softly, as if he knew every fracture in the floor. Brian. Michael's best buddy. His brother in arms. When Michael got hurt a week ago, he knelt on the field and begged him to stay strong. The one who swore his allegiance to the squad. Now he stood in this filthy storage room, staring blankly at his buddies, unable to identify them. How could you? Emily muttered, grasping her temples as if to drive the vision out of her mind. Brian merely nodded at the tall guy, as if reporting. Everything is under control, he continued, his voice robotic, like a memorized sentence. It was not Brian. That was his shadow. Emily felt the earth under her world crumble. Brian had deceived Michael. Betrayed them all. The most horrifying thing she noticed was that he had no sorrow in his eyes. Only nothingness. There's also fear. As deep as Jacob's. What if he couldn't get out either? What if he was also forced? All four of them departed. After a little delay, Emily dashed to her car and sped away from this dreadful spot. Questions raced through her mind, but the time for thought was past. Now it all felt like a joke. Brian had deceived not only Michael but the whole squad. Emily realized she needed to act soon. She meticulously documented all of the evidence, including warehouse images, Jacob's notebook entries, and farm locations. But, before going to the police, she required definitive confirmation. She waited by his car after practice, hiding in the shade of the parking lot. The air was dense with anxiety, and her fingers frantically drummed on the phone's body, which was already recording. When Jacob appeared, his expression transformed, as if he had saw a ghost. He paused, his hand stuck on the handle. You know where Michael is, Emily remarked, emerging from the shadows. She looked him directly in the eyes, not allowing him to look away. You know Brian deceived him. Tell the truth, Jacob. I won't go till I find out. Silence. Only the distant chirping of grasshoppers in the countryside. Jacob closed his eyes, as if gathering power. When he exhaled, his breath trembled like autumn leaves in the wind. You don't understand, Emily, he said, his voice cracking. I did not want to be a part of this. They forced me. Who? She yelled out, taking a step closer with the phone in her pocket. Jacob looked around to ensure that no one was listening. Then he dropped his voice. These individuals. They have complete control. Brian and several other squad members were involved in match fixing. They were deliberately losing to generate money. Michael learned about it. He intended to inform the coach, but he paused, rubbing a scar on his palm with his finger, a reminder of an earlier injury. He was kidnapped to silence the truth. Emily felt her body go frigid. And you? She whispered. Why are you with them? Jacob grinned cruelly, and in that instant, he appeared years older. I got recruited. They threatened to harm my family if I did not cooperate. He glanced up at her, and the gulf of agony in their eyes caused Emily to back away. I couldn't take that chance, Emily. I'm not furious, I'm simply stuck. She peered at him, examining his face for indications of deception. But there was just sincerity there, shattered, tired, but genuine. He was not the villain. He was another victim. Like Michael, like, perhaps even Brian. "Where is he now?" she said, her tone stronger than she had anticipated. Jacob shakes his head. "I'm not sure. But I can help you find him." He extended out his hand. And in that moment, his eyes were filled with resolve rather than fear. Emily recognized that the time for introspection was past. She painstakingly gathered all of the evidence, as if preparing for the ultimate battle. Conversation records from the phone show Brian threatening Jacob. Photos from the warehouse show blurred but plainly discernible faces of offenders. Coordinates of the property and Michael's bloody bracelet. Video in which Jacob reveals everything. She reported everything to the police, but she believed it wasn't enough. The evidence was circumstantial, and the culprits were powerful. Then she devised a strategy. The next day, the stadium was full with yells. Thousands of followers, unaware that their idols were traitors, gathered on the field with a placard reading, "We know the truth," her hands quivering but her gaze steadfast. Jacob saw. His eyes were filled with horror. He knew what was going to happen. But there was also relief. The chains had been broken. In a couple of seconds, cops invaded the field. Brian rushed toward the goal but was pushed down. His accomplices attempted to blend in with the crowd, but were called out. Emily dashed towards Jacob, clutching his hand. "Where's Michael?" she yelled, unaware that her voice had become a scream. Jacob gestured towards the exit. "In the warehouse. In the basement. He's alive." The final word he spoke as if it were a prayer. And suddenly everything became muddled up, sirens, screams, tears of relief. But Emily was already running. Because the game has not ended yet. Because the youngster, whom everyone assumed had died, was waiting to be rescued. And she was the only one who knew where to find him. The saga of the Black Wolves wasn't over. Police spotlights lit the warehouse basement, exposing a man resting on dusty planks in the dark. Michael was still alive, but his appearance was horrifying. Sunken cheeks, blue under his eyes, and hands bound with unclean rags. When he raised his head in response to the disturbance, his eyes, despite their exhaustion, shone with a warm glow, the first true light in this hell in weeks. "Emily." His voice was weak and barely audible, yet it was so powerful that the girl's breath hitched. He extended a shaky hand, the fingers of which still had blood under the nails. "You saved me," he said, and one whisper contained a full story: fear, hope, and unbounded thanks. I knew you could." Following the affair, Blackwood was never the same. A city that once prided itself on its togetherness and purity now carried an indelible sense of humiliation. The streets, which had only yesterday been alive with joy and support, were now filled with murmurs of treachery. The Black Wolf Squad did not just disband. They were pulled from school albums, images were taken out of store displays, and flags were removed from the stadium front. It is as if they never existed. Like a humiliating page that they are attempting to forget. The worst part, however, was the court hearing. Brian and his pals stood silently, their expressions flat and disinterested. They did not protest or cry for compassion. Their eyes were glassy, as if they were peering beyond the hall's walls into a distant, unknown reality. After the judge imposed the punishment, the question of who was behind it remained unanswered. Because these people were only entertainers. Pawns in someone's larger, darker game. However, there were no responses. Only quiet. Brian's lifeless eyes revealed a single inscription: "We were just part of something much bigger." Emily continued to live her life, but nothing remained the same. She went to school, laughed with her pals, and supported her new team. Everything appeared to be the same as before. But suddenly, shadows had emerged in her world. Shadows that resembled, even close friends may have secrets you should not know. Even in a city where everyone knows one another, the most horrific secrets may be kept. Even heroes may become puppets. Sometimes the reality was so awful that I lost my breath, that it scorched her heart and left wounds on her spirit. But Emily concluded it was better to know the truth than to live in a lovely lie. Because lying is contagious. It progressively eats away at everything, reducing even the brightest emotions to dust. The city declared her a heroine. Her photographs appeared in publications, she was interviewed on the radio, and passers-by on the street smiled at her. But that didn't matter to Emily. The key thing was something else. That she rescued Michael. The one who halted the evil that threatened to ruin their small planet. Something that helped Jacob achieve atonement. But every time she passed the old stadium, she felt as if someone was watching her from beneath the stands. Every time the wind blew through the abandoned warehouse's broken windows, she could hear murmurs. "Are you sure it's over? Are you sure you found out the whole truth?" Emily didn't respond. But deep down, she understood that certain mysteries remained hidden in Blackwood's shadows. They'll resurface sometime. Emily saved Michael. She revealed the plot. She even helped bring the criminals to justice. Is that really the end of it? That night in the warehouse transformed her life. During games, she sometimes feels like unseen eyes are watching her from the empty stands. In the abandoned barn where they discovered Michael, noises can still be heard through the rotting wood. If you believe you know the entire truth, you are misinformed. The game has just started. Would you have remained silent if you known what they did to the other missing players?